I have not seen them at all.
Climate is changing.
And then did have like the Labor Day fruit flies up for the first time. I could not, this whole trying to compost thing, I had to stop the experiment because
Yeah,
I could not stop. It's not very healthy.
we're discussing bugs.
2 years ago, she had to talk about the Christmas fly around her house, and I was allowing just like the fly to be fishy at the time without telling them. So it was forever around the call.
We're still friends.
Yeah. I like it. I didn't have sort of a bug trapper thing the next year because it got out of hand and finally scared to sleep. So it becomes a
Yes.
hobby.
Excellent. So this is the closest approximate I'm going to have. Full healthy meal. Relaxing.
Great to Master Dae.
I like it really good. Nice and well and pretty. Yeah. What's your name? Satya. Yes. Nice to meet you as well. No. I'm a member.
There's another, if you look for a chair, Danielle, there's one in the corner folded, if you want to just unfold it. Sure. You sit over here so you can see them. Yeah. All right, good morning, everybody. Thank you for staying here for our Dharma talk. Giving our introductory talk today is George Eastwood. He began practicing at the Providence Zen Center in early 2020 and took 5 precepts in November 2021. Living in Cumberland, he visits the Zen Center whenever is possible and also benefits from the hybrid format developed during the pandemic. George is the father of 2. He graduated from Northeastern University with the goal of advancing cancer treatment. He now serves as executive director of the Emily Whitehead Foundation, a nonprofit dedicated to supporting patients and advocating for policies that expand access to advanced therapy treatments. And answering questions today is Zen Master Tan Gong, José Ramírez. Zen Master Tan Gong is the co-guiding teacher of the Providence Zen Center and the guiding teacher of the Delaware Valley Zen Center, which he helped establish in 1999. He began studying Zen with Zen Master Dae Kwang at the Providence Zen Center in 1994, receiving Inka, which is full authorization to teach, in 2009, and Dharma transmission from Zen Master Dae Kwang on April 1st, 2023. As an industrial statistician, he works with engineers and scientists to help them make sense of data. He lives in Rhode Island with his wife and daughter. So again, thank you all. Thank you guys for appearing.
Good to go. Thanks, Dave. I guess this one is for online. We have a talk, and right in front of us is nobody, except for one Ilfinin. But I guess it makes us scan and look and see. But always interesting when the room changes. I think I've alternated back and forth in the 4 or 5 talks that I've given. You never know what room we'll be in, so I think great analogy for our life. And I thank everyone for coming here on the week of Thanksgiving. Lots of family. I don't know about many of you, but how many people is it fun for? Not me. I thought about this a bit when preparing for the talk, which I famously, at least to Carol, knows that I don't prepare. I just come up and ramble, and you can't be wrong if you didn't think of it before, and that's the whole practice. We're done. But mentioned in my bio, popping in the Zen Center whenever I can, often traveling for work or have my daughter. So there's not a lot of times that I can do that, but fortunately, last Monday I was able to, and was able to practice solo with Kwan Hang Sanim. I don't know if he's in the room here. So I did ask, what the hell should I talk about? I never have a prompt, I just wing it. One time it was about iced coffee for 17 minutes, which I've never brought to the Zen Center. I decided to bring it today because if I don't know what to say, I'll just stop, pause, look like I'm thinking really deeply and take a sip of it. That's something that I do in any talk I give for work. Easy catch, you just have it, pause, look at someone, take a sip of something, and you can pretend you know what the hell you're talking about and gather yourself. So I may do that a couple of times here in the 12 minutes I have left. But in reality, I could probably talk for 2 hours if we just keep going. But the prompt given by Kwan Hang Sanim was, look at dropping ashes on the Buddha. And for those that don't know, it's one of the books that we sell in the bookstore, which you can visit after this. We don't say that enough at the end of practice, so lots of support tools down there and forever growing. But it's a collection of letters written to Seung Sung Sanim, the founder of this school. I vowed not to read any of these books when I came here in 2020 because I just read everything and get sick of it and give it up in 2 weeks. And I said, this sounds like that's not the thing to do this for. I bought the books, and I did have them, which I knew. And this one I've read a bit more over the last couple of years because it's anecdotal, and there is a single letter you can read, and you don't have to commit yourself to the whole book. You just dart around. So it was an interesting practice finding the book when I got home. Starting to think about how should I decide which story to pick to think about one of these millions of Zen stories that have been passed down over time. And really just flipped through the book until something reminded me of a story I had heard before. And as Diego pointed out to me, there was no pressure up here, just 2,500 years of Buddhism and 50 years of this school's riding on your storytelling ability. So no pressure. If anybody wants to do their first talk next week, feel free to sign up and you can ramble for the first 5 minutes about nothing like me. So the story that I saw was one that I had seen a few times. And, you know, a lot of these intro talks can take a variety of paths, something that's happened this week to someone, something that somebody's been thinking and writing about and stewing over time. But, you know, this is an interesting one because it was, as I mentioned, prompted by letters to Seung Sung Sanim. And then in the replies, you can really see this back and forth. And when you write things, it's really interesting when you get, I guess, the truth pointed right back at you and you can see that writing right before you, which in my use of AI extensively in the last 3 years, I've negated the previous 41 years of, I told you this, look how clear it is. Because when you go back and look at the prompt and you see the shitty answer that ChatGPT gives you, you're like, wait, I basically said, be magical and give me an answer. How many times have I done that to my kids, to employees, to whoever? So I think there's something in this, seeing both sides of the writing, that's powerful. But the story goes, it's part of the letter, but really the story that is the part of the teaching consists of the sixth patriarch walking along and coming across two monks arguing. What are they arguing over? They're both looking at a flag in the wind. And the first monk says, I say that the wind is moving. And the second monk says, I see that the flag is moving. And however long this is observed or goes on, the sixth patriarch eventually walks over and says, you're both wrong, your mind is moving. And that one has stuck with me for a long time. And I don't know why. It wasn't something profound or something deep, but it's number 30 in the book. And I was scrolling through and started reading about 7 other ones. Nope, don't know enough about it to ramble about it for 15 minutes. Nope, never thought of it before. So essentially, it's not much greater than any other non-practicing, non-thinking, non-writing talk that I've given, because for some reason that has stuck with me, that story. And it gave me the holiday to think about why. Also to reflect on the letter itself, written by someone named Pete in 1970, so if you're here, curious where that's developed, or if you're online, let's continue to see where this progressed. But what popped up while I was sitting was, Thanksgiving and lots of family, as I started this with. And nothing probably personifies my family, and I imagine most others, than arguing about something so ridiculous as about the wind or the flag moving. Of course, on Tuesday, I'm thinking, where the hell can the wind move? Does it? Does it have substance? And that's the great questions that we can ask here. But when we live in the real life, there's a lot of arguments over nothing. And quite often, I love to tell people that since I was 7. Why are we arguing about which way the toilet paper roll goes? Doesn't it wipe the same? People did not like that from a younger George and attributed it to Mr. Science always has to be right. It's like, let's go solve a bigger problem than an obvious need for therapy based on where you're putting your toilet paper roll or how you cook a food or how you label something. It's pretty ridiculous, and I've always known this, so maybe it was destined to end up here in 2020, that there's a practice where we can ask ridiculous questions and get over it. But this is very much plagues me in my life and how I handle these questions. So I was faced with this on Thanksgiving. The argument of the year was about shepherd's pie and if it had cheese on it or not. My answer, who the fuck cares? I could not say, but I stopped and I did not say that, which is growth in me if I want to keep a relationship with my family. I think for 30 years I didn't know that I was considered an asshole for saying things like this. I just thought that was what was needed. Maybe I'll go back to that once I'm a better practicer of Zen. I'll start telling them there instead of my brother finding it online later if he wants to look it up. But I did not say that, but I was in the room and I was like, do I say nothing? What do I do? This constant thought, almost everything in our life is what do I say? What do I do? How do I, is it my job to say anything? Who doesn't want cheese on things is another thing. I could say many things, but I'd be taking a side between my brother and his girlfriend. I could decide strategically which one makes more sense. I'm good at that too, if I want a means to an end in some way, what's better for my brother. But in the end, I just said, has a potato ever said it's shepherd's pie? And everybody looked at me like I'm crazy. So there's a new way of crazy, not George the scientist, George the crazy Zen practitioner who asks us if a potato knows what it is. But that one wasn't remembered, and nobody will probably remember it because they just think I've lost my mind at times. And I think that was a common refrain in my family when visiting here. He must have gone, he went crazy. But I seem to recall the telling it how it is, George, was not very well liked at times. As I started the practice, I'm like, at least they will kind of invite me back. Now, whether I want to go or not is another question, which we can get into once I'm maybe talk to my therapist a bit more about that. I'm not quite sure how I feel about why we go where we go on the holidays and what the purpose is. But that morning, I did go back to the house that I grew up at, stared at Carol's house across the river from the Blackstone River in Pawtucket, and I wrote for a little bit about, do I want to go there and do I have to? I don't remember what I wrote. That's the beauty. I just forget about it, and it's in a remarkable notebook somewhere. But I do think about even my judgment of a question being ridiculous. And most of the thoughts I have are like this. let's worry about curing cancer, not shepherd's pie. And I think that has always been a part of me, but I've always been victim of falling into ridiculous arguments, falling into the emotion, going and researching things and coming back and showing everybody why they're wrong and why they're intellectually lazy and how unacceptable that is in a world so complex. But all of that does forget about experience and emotion. And I've been given an amazing gift of detachment that I use too much in some ways and not enough in others. I think about March 15th, and we were talking about this earlier. I was about to sit for a retreat, and my dad passed away a minute before I went to sit. And I went out and I sat out front and asked some questions. Should I go? Should I stay? What's the appropriate thing to do? I ended up leaving, but might have been best to sit there for 9 hours and contemplate death. My mother was a mortician and went to school when I was in 7th and 8th grade, so I think about death probably more than the average person. I've helped embalm bodies, I've dug a grave, so it's not lost on me that it's going to happen. But does everybody want to talk about death at Thanksgiving? No. Did anybody bring up my father once? No. Did I think about making a huge deal and making everybody talk about death in an uncomfortable way? Yes. Was that a tool that I've learned to use to make everybody as uncomfortable as I am speaking in front of people? I got really good at it. I can just make everybody else feel more uncomfortable, and then I'm the most comfortable person in the room. So, just one question to Kwan Hang Sanim, one talk, one Zen story that really is, to me, why you're arguing about this, it's very clear. That answer is mind is moving, but I still can't help but try to answer the question of, well, which one is moving, the wind or the flag? My mind certainly is, but we still want to figure out everything else. I have 1 minute left, and I'll try to stick to time, get better answers from Jose than I will have. But there was a second one that I read that I had never read before, and it was at the end, and actually strangely wrote this in a 10-paragraph text to my son in reply to a 5-paragraph text that he sent me yesterday. This is kind of like a letter I may write Jose via email. My son kind of has this thing. He stayed in Florida for Thanksgiving. He was contemplating, he loved being with his girlfriend but missed us. And I was like, I'm flying down for a conference next week, I'll see you, so I don't give a shit if you were here, I'll see you. I'm not necessarily a huge fan of pilgrims and taking over land myself, but I am a fan of seeing you. But we'll talk about it. But I did send him this really quick story that's number 100, the last in the book, that was really impactful and powerful, and maybe we'll speak about this one the next time. But it mentioned that Sun Sanim was at a retreat in Cambridge Zen Center and gave a talk, and a student came up and asked him, what is love? And even in reading that hurts my heart, even trying to define such a thing, because I have no clue what that is or what that means. Just what are we going to do? How do we help? But Sun Sanim asked back to the student, I ask you, what is love? And no answer. And then, within this, after the pause, he then says, you listen to me, I listen to you. And that is love. That's what I sent to my son today. And you all have to listen to me, and I don't have to listen to you, so I guess this isn't love. And with that, I'll pass it to Jose.
Thank you, Josh. Thank you. And thank you for bringing up those stories. Good morning, everybody. Good to see you all. People in Zoom, hello. So we have all these stories, all these traditions in Zen, not only in Zen, but language in general. Sometimes there are things that really grab you. You may be listening to a song and maybe a verse there or something, or you read a poem or you read an article and it's something that grabs you. like this story. Yeah. Interesting story. The two monks looking at the flag that is moving. And of course, the argument appears. Because we all have our opinions, or ideas, and of course we're always right. And it's interesting that the sixth ancestor, he mentioned, mine is moving, blah, blah, blah. But even the sixth ancestor said too much. Is also not correct. Yeah? We think that that's tagline, oh, the mind is moving. We're like, wow, that's really saying stuff. But that's still too much. Too much. Yeah. We have a group of Dharma teachers in training here at the Providence Zen Center. We get together once a month. And we're going over the Compass of Zen, which is another book that Zen Master Dae wrote. And we're looking at different things. In one of the chapters, we're looking at the Hinayana Buddhism. And one chapter is talking about the three types of practices, which are precepts and meditation and wisdom. And I mentioned that there is a sutra in the Buddhist tradition called the Bahija Sutra. So Bahija was a person that came to see the Buddha, looking for advice and how to practice. And then the Buddha says, well, this is how you should train yourself. In the seen, there will be just the seen. In the heard, there will be just the heard. In the sense, there will be just the sense. In the cognized, there will be just the cognized. That's the way you should train yourself, Bahija. Wow. And then the Buddha continues, when in the seen, there is just the seen. When in the heard, there is just what you heard. When in the sense, there is just the sense. When in the cognized, there is just the cognized. Then, Bahija, there will be no you in there. Yeah. And when there is no you in there, then there is no be you here or beyond or in between. Yeah. Just that is the end of suffering. That's the tagline of the sutra. And what that points to is that you that always appears. We see something and there's a whole bunch of memories and comparisons of things that appear automatically, just because that's the way it is. This is something as this is blue, but it's faded, whatever. Your train of thought goes. Yeah. And this is no different from the Heart Sutra that says, no eyes, no ears, no nose, no tongue, blah, blah, blah. The first time you read that, you say, It's a little strange. But that points to that, just seeing. And that's the key word there, just. Yeah. You can summarize everything to that. Yeah. The Sansanim used to say, just do it. Just. Yeah. Dogen used to say, just sit. Yeah. And he said the just part that is a little hard for us. Yeah. That's why Sansanim, we used to say, just do it. Just do it. And if we just do it, then there's no I, my, me in between all the stuff. Sounds very simple, but it takes some practice to do that. Yeah. And if there's no I, my, me in there, then love appears. Yeah. That's what Sansanim said. Yeah. I'm talking, you're listening. When you talk, I listen. But truly listen, with no ears, as in the Heart Sutra. Then that's love. Yeah. That points to function. Yeah. One of the things that always attracted me to the school and the teachings of Zen Master Dae is his emphasis on function. When you start a practice, You practice because you want to get some calm, some whatever, maybe enlightenment. Yeah. But then what do you do with that? If you attain that, then what? Yeah. Sun Sanin always pointed to that. He will say, oh, one more step is necessary. If you attain truth, how do you use truth? Yeah, to help the world. Yeah. It's like, oh, interesting. It's not just this whatever idea we have about enlightenment, but using that. And using that in the situation, relationships, and functions that we encounter every second, then love appears. Yeah? The wisdom and compassion. Yeah? Sometimes in some Buddhist traditions talk about the two wings of a bird. Yeah, you need both. Yeah. Or in the slogan that we have here is first attain enlightenment and then help all beings. Yeah. Or in the Christian tradition, we just had a Christian Buddhist retreat. Yeah. And they asked Jesus the same, what is the most important commandment of all of the laws that we have? And he said, you should love God with all your heart, your mind, your spirit, and then your neighbor as you love yourself. Same spirit as first attain enlightenment, then help all beings. Yeah. Any questions? Paul Sanin.
Hi, how are you? So what you're mentioning seems to me that a lot of people tend to be self-conscious, and so that just the opposite of what you're saying. So then how do you deal with that self-consciousness when you're talking? You can't get yourself out of your head when you're speaking or when you're feeling self-conscious.
Yeah, so Pop Sanim is asking the questions how we get out of being self-conscious. We're all self-conscious all the time. Or I is in the way. Yeah, we practice. At least in our tradition and a lot of the Buddhist tradition, we practice. Yeah. And practice starts with the precepts. That's one of the things that we were reading in that chapter. The three types of practices. One is the precepts. And some of you have taken precepts. You see people with brown casa. And those are 5 precepts that point to what we do all the time, which is actions with our body, with what we say, and what we think. Okay? So that's the first step. Yeah? Watching what we think, what we do, and what we say. Yeah? So if you look at those precepts, the way they are worded in the school, the first one says, I vow to abstain from taking life. I vow to abstain from taking life. It's interesting that you are the one making the vow. It's not coming from the outside. It's you. Yeah. I vow. Okay? So you're making a commitment. Or as Zen Master Bonghe Judy Roitman, I like the way she puts that. She says, those are promises of responsibility. Promises of responsibility. I vow to abstain, and that's also an important word because that recognizes that we're not going to hit the target all the time. From taking life. Yeah, from taking life. And then what does that mean? Yeah. At the obvious level, yeah, that sounds like not killing. Yeah. But what is life? Yeah. Normally when people want to take precepts, I ask them to spend some time with them and see them as a koan. What is life? Yeah, life is everywhere. Things are alive. Yeah. And there's always a flip side. If I vow to abstain from taking life, do I also vow to preserve it when I see it? Mm-hmm. Promises of responsibility. And then, that's a bodily action. Yeah. I vow to abstain from taking things not given. Yeah. What is that thing not given? And if I vow to abstain from that, do I also vow to be generous? I vow to abstain from misconduct done in lust. Yeah, we understand some of the nuances of that, the sexual part and all that. But what do I lust after? Can be books, can be music, can be coffee, can be tea. We just had some nice tea out there. And is that interfering with me functioning in? Yeah. I vow to abstain from lying. That's interesting too. Yeah. And then the fifth one is, I vow to abstain from intoxicants taken to induce heedlessness, which points to our practice, because our practice is to wake up. Yeah. So those are the 5 pieces, and you notice that they deal with our bodily actions and how we think and how we talk, speech. Yeah? So that's one of those pillars of our practice. The next one is meditation. Yeah? And that's where we come here. On Sundays we practice. We have 2 sitting periods. We have walking meditation. We have the gamut of 1-day retreat all the way to 90 days. But what we do there is just see that stuff that, oh, look at that. Interesting. His stomach is growling. We're in a Zen retreat. This should be peaceful, blah, blah, blah. Or whatever it is, Some of you laugh because, you probably experienced something like that. But it's interesting because you get to see yourself rubbing against each other. Yeah. That's the bad part and good part of other human beings. But in retreats, we help each other with that. So. And after we practice for a while and we get some calmness, we slow down. Yeah. Then we can develop some wisdom, which is the third part of that. And if you look at the Eightfold Path, gets divided into those 3 pieces. They have the right action, right speech, and right livelihood. That points to the precept side of things. And then you have right concentration, right mindfulness, and my favorite, right effort, that we tend to forget, because this takes effort. Yeah. No one can do it for you. Yeah, you have to do it. And then right intention and right view, that points to wisdom. Yeah. Once you have all that, then you can see sometimes the intentions behind your actions. And the Buddha said that, monks and nuns, intention is what I call karma, because karma comes from that, the intention behind our actions. Why do we do what we do? What and for whom? Yeah. And you heard me many, 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 many times, but this is a rich question that I love. Is why do you eat every day? Yeah. Yeah. And we can go through the list of all the things. Yeah. But there's a behind meaning to that question, behind me. So that's a long answer, but it points to all the things that we need to do, which is just practice. Yeah. We always emphasize this is a Zen practice. Yeah. So, thank you for me. Another question? You did it, George, see?
Everybody's properly uncomfortable.
That's it. That's it.
So during orientation today, I talked about why we practice. And the point that I was trying to make was we practice to see our minds. And that's very much in line with what you just said. What do you think about the obstacles that we face in trying to attain something in a practice that's not supposed to be attainment? right? How the ego and the I gets in the way and causes all the trouble. You know, we all come here looking for something, and then we get stuck. Even though we hear all the great words, how do we cut through it?
Yes. So the question is, we practice to see our mind, and then we all come here, we have some type of idea or something that we want. Yeah. And then we get stuck. If you stick around for a little bit, then you get stuck. Yeah. Which is a good place to be. Yeah. It's a good place to be. So yeah, we all need some type of aspiration or some reason to practice. Yeah. A lot of times we come to practice because we face some crisis. You know. Someone we love died, or we're in a relationship and, you know, the relationship ends, or something happens that makes you face mortality or suffering. And we have those experiences a lot, but I sometimes see those that, you know, we hit the snooze button. You know? But there's sometimes that the alarm is so much that you have to do something. And at those points, you know, you may come to a place of practice, maybe looking for an answer. Yeah? And you get those questions in orientation. Or, you know, you may just want enlightenment because you read about that and all that. It sounds pretty nice. You know, if I can live my life like that, maybe, yeah, things will be better, in a sense. Yeah. But what the Buddha taught was just the end of suffering. Yeah. Suffering and the end of suffering. You notice when I mentioned that sutra, and he's saying there's no you in there when there's no you here or beyond or in between. Just that is the end of suffering. So giving us the formula. So because we all want to be happy and we don't want to suffer. Yeah. That's what the Buddha discovered. Wow. But at least he pointed to some things that we can do for that. So we get stuck, and a lot of times it's because we have some desire for something. Yeah, desire for something. And the Son Sanim used to say, put it all down, put it all down. And that's hard. That is hard. Yeah, that is hard. But it does help if you are sincere and you have some effort and you have a community to practice, a framework that allows you to bring up these questions, that allows you to read stuff and reflect. Reflect not only in the sense of, you know, reflection and reading, but reflect yourself in that. Like that story about the flag, okay? The first person is probably an engineer. Yeah? It's the wind that is making the flag move and all that. Yeah. There is a flag, it's moving, or, you know, the same teacher said, no, it's your mind. And that points to that, you know. If we can see that our mind is creating a lot of things, then it's a little easier to get unstuck. But it helps to sit retreat. It helps sometimes to have interviews and bring those questions to that. Because we all get stuck. We're all in the same boat. And George mentioned, you know, we have 2,600 years of that, you know, plus the 50 plus years of the school. Yeah. So that's part of that. So it's sitting with that. And it takes time, you know, takes time. Yeah. And that's a great doubt. So those moments just to persevere. You know. But talk to someone, communicate, you know. With your Sangha friends, you know, with your teachers. But sit retreat and try to see that. I was watching a video of Episcopal nun. It's interesting because she was talking about when she was in seminary and she was living by herself. And how wonderful when you live by yourself, because you have control over things. And then she moved to the monastery, and then that's it. Sharing a bathroom, sharing food. Her car became part of the monastery, so other nuns will use it. And it's interesting because she said, the first time she went out, used her car, the seat was in the wrong place. The mirror, everything. And you're like, wow, that is the practice. If at that moment you see that, say, oh, okay, it's not something big, it's just that, I can relate to that. Because a lot of cars now have that little memory button, so you can press and it's the way you like it. And I can relate to that. Something as simple as that, but like that story, that hit me. It's like, wow, yeah, that's the practice. I get into the car and the seat is not in the right place and all that, because someone else used the car. But we're attached to, or I, my, me so much. There's something as simple as that. Yeah. And that's part of that practice in the monastery. She was laughing. That means she understood something too. Yeah, we laugh too. But that's it. That's the simple practice. If we can see that, yeah, then we can do something about it. Oh, okay, yeah. You can laugh about it. Yeah, put it all down. That I use them as a catchphrase. But that's the point. And for that, at least in my experience, you need a little bit of practice. So you can really, I mentioned, when you meditate, you slow down. You can see that. Because what happens is that the mind moves so fast. I always mention that I think it's faster than the speed of light. That at that moment you start cursing it. Like, oh, my seat. That's it. So there needs to be some type of... And again, in my experience, practice helps with that. But it's just to see that. Yeah, to see that. That's part of that, trying to get unstuck. So it's bringing also the practice into your everyday life and seeing your likes and dislikes, your likes and dislikes. Yeah, that's that.
I have a question about the how do you balance this just do it attitude with impulsivity and impatience? Because there's so many things. Let's say, you want to do so many things, but you can't do it all at once, and sometimes you have to wait.
Yeah, if you find out, let me know. Yeah, there's so many things to do. Yeah. But the just do it part, that means if you pick something, then just do that. Yeah, that's at least that part. Picking may be a little more involved because there may be some circumstances or priorities that we have to take into account. Yeah, we all have this, life and work and practice too, because it's part of our life. That requires us, again, to slow down a little bit, and see. But the moment we pick something, just do that, at least that part. Yeah. So that's that. These are, I think we all, deal with that. Yeah. But again, the moment you pick something, then do that. Because what happens is, if we have 10 priorities and things to do, then we pick one, but still think about the other 9. And then we don't get to do this 100%. Yeah. So at least for that. Yeah. That reminds me of a story. There are many versions of the story, which is this person that is walking down the beach in the evening, and someone is with her, and she's grabbing, the shells and throwing them back in the ocean, because the waves are washing them ashore. Of course, they're going to die. And there are hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of them. Yeah. But this person, they're walking and talking, and she keeps doing this. She keeps doing this. She keeps doing this. Yeah. And then at some point, the person said, "Well, why are you doing that? Don't you see there are hundreds of them? You're not going to make any difference." And then she said, "For this one, I am." Which is interesting. It's that point of, at least for this one, we're making that difference, that little ripple. Yeah. And it may as well then in the next 30 seconds, the same one will be washed to shore again. We don't know. But at that moment, that's that. So that's one of those stories that always stuck with me. So thank you for the question. Any other questions? Yes, please.
I've had this question for a while, and I thought I could kind of answer it myself, but I could use some perspective. You mentioned right intention and right effort and right practice. I've been practicing sitting meditation for a long time. I started rather young, so I've been practicing fairly consistently, around 24 years. And throughout that time, you know how it is. I mean, it never really gets easy, but
Yeah.
I've gotten to a point over many years where I can slow things down a bit in a practice. If I meditate for a half an hour, maybe I get 2 minutes, where things can really slow down and I can see things. Around 6 months ago, I left a job I was very unhappy at. It felt deeply unfulfilled, and I made what I think was a very good decision to leave. 6 months later, so I was unemployed for 6 months while I tried to figure out what I want to do next and who I am, what would be a good place for me to fit, etc. A lot of uncertainty. I did recently find a job. I start in 2 weeks, but what I've noticed is during this time, around 5-6 months, I lost that ability to find any stillness in sitting. And it got to the point where I said, what the hell am I doing? Why am I doing this to myself? Why? I sit every day for 25 minutes at least, and nothing. Just my mind would go crazy, just in weird directions, thinking about things that make no sense, that have no relevance to my life, typically very provocative things or upsetting things, or sometimes just spiraling thoughts. No matter how hard I tried, I could not find any stillness, so I stopped. I just said, I'm done. Why am I doing this? Other than the Sunday that I come here, I just said I'm just going to stop. And I guess my question, and the question I've had for a long time, is there value in sitting? And if so, what is that value if that's what's happening and you can't get anywhere, no matter how hard you try? It's like, should I just stop? Or is there something going on there and just sitting that maybe is bigger? I don't know. But that is my question.
In a way, this is a little similar to what Dave was asking about. We get stuck somehow. And when you were talking about it, I was going like this because our practice has peaks and valleys. But one important thing is to keep the practice going. You said to at least come here. So to have some type of practice. One thing that we recommend is that you sit with other people. That's why we have retreats. And also one of the things that we have, at least in the Korean tradition, that is eclectic in the sense that we have a whole bunch of different practices. Okay, And those practices I found very helpful, depending on the situation, the state of mind. So in our tradition, yes, we have the sitting and we have the walking meditation, those are done. And you can already tell the difference between just sitting, that sometimes it's not, but especially if you have a lot of stuff going on. It can be hard to sit. Walking meditation may be a little easier because at least you're moving. Yeah. But then we also have mantra practice. A mantra practice is just reciting something like Kwanseum Bosa, Kwanseum Bosa, Kwanseum Bosa, Kwanseum Bosa. Yeah. And that's a way to give in the mind some candy, to keep it distracted with just that phrase. Centering prayer movement is something similar like that. In centering prayer, you go pick a sacred word, from the book, and then you sit with that, and then reciting that word, and then if your thoughts go somewhere, then you bring it back. Yeah? So mantra is like that. Gives you what we call one mind, not necessarily to slow down the mind, but it keeps it. And then we also have prostrations. We have bow practice. And that's great if you have a lot of thinking, because it's not that it's impossible, but it's hard to have a discursive thinking if you're doing that, It's like aerobics in a way. Yeah.
Yeah.
So we do that practice, every morning, 108 bows. And that involves your body, your breathing, and all that. So that's a practice that we also do. In those situations, sometimes we recommend that. So we can alternate with all that. Plus, we have chanting. Chanting also helps. It's very helpful because, again, you can just focus on the chants, and that sometimes helps. So take advantage of the tradition you're in. If you're comfortable with our tradition, as you say, if this resonates with you, then explore that. Explore the different practices. Come and sit retreat. Because sometimes, sitting by yourself, you question that. But in a retreat, you have a schedule. You have something that you follow with everybody. And that, at first, we don't like it because it's a schedule, and I'm free. But in a way, it gives you freedom because you don't have to worry about what you're going to eat, what you're going to wear. So the schedule is the same. And if you just follow that, then you can really see your mind doing all this stuff. Yeah. Add that to the situation. And you heard this, again, using all the stories that Sun Sanim used to say, this is like potatoes washing themselves. Yes, in Korea, they will put it in a big barrel with water and then just move them up and down, and they just by hitting each other, the dirt will come off of the potatoes. It's a very ingenious way of washing potatoes, not one by one, just all together. So sometimes you use that analogy for a retreat. We're all these potatoes hitting each other and helping. Because you realize that you're not special, you're not the only one with that stuff. You're with the whole Sangha there. So we keep, pushing the practice, but that's what we're in existence, the practice. Otherwise, it's just blah, 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 blah. It sounds pretty good. But until you do it, you won't know if what I'm telling you is a whole bunch of BS. Could be, I have the title, I have the stick. But Zen is about the experience. Zen Master Dae Kwang always says that being a Zen teacher is very easy because there's nothing to teach. It's all about your experience. All we can do is point you to that experience. So that's that. Hopefully you can continue practicing, and take advantage of the Sangha.
Thank you.
Well, thank you all for coming. May you all be happy. May you all be free from suffering. And you can use all the benefits from your practice to help yourself and the world.
Thank you very much. And I just have a few announcements. I'll keep it brief if I can. So the next retreat coming up is the YMJJ. It's a 7-day retreat, 3-day minimum, with Zen Master Hyun Ja, Alma Potter. And that retreat is filling up, but we do still have a few spots open. So that retreat is coming up beginning of December and is followed by Buddha's Enlightenment Day weekend. On Saturday, there will be a precept ceremony, well, a Buddha's Enlightenment Day ceremony, precept ceremony, Inka ceremony, which is when a new Jida Pupsanim, well, someone becomes a Jida Pupsanim. So that will be very interesting for those of us who haven't seen that before. On Sunday, we will have, at 8 a.m., we'll have Keto with the Global Sangha for just half an hour. Then we'll have our usual program. And then, if weather allows, we'll have some eco-Dharma work where we do some cleanup and prepare to hopefully have a native garden planted in the spring. Next coming up will be midnight practice on New Year's Eve. And we are about to open registration for a self-guided retreat right after New Year. Foundations of Zen, which will happen the first Saturday in January. And then we will also have a one-day retreat at the end of that month with our co-guiding teacher and Zen Master. The gift shop, will the gift shop be open? Okay, the gift shop will be open. Just try to be undisruptive to the rental. Did you have something to add?
Yes.
Zen Master.
So one of the things that we're doing as a Sangha is to help the community. So we're asking for, if you have any canned goods and things that you can bring, you see a table there. So we're collecting food for a food drive for a food bank here in Cumberland, our community. So anything you can do will be great. And we plan to deliver that after the Sangha weekend. So we have about 2 more weeks. So there's a sign there when you come in. Table. So yeah, that's all.
All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you for reminding me of the Christmas fly.
When he shows up. Right, yeah, the ladybugs. And I was wondering, my daughter finally moved from my walk-in closet bedroom to the basement. So, and the ladybugs usually have been, so I thought maybe I haven't seen them because our life is not out there. But you haven't seen them? I went and looked yesterday. Good or bad for the weather. And the fact that I didn't put tulips, I allegedly am going to plant in November. My favorite.
Yeah, wonderful.